Hi.
Hi.
So just feeling grounded even though we're sitting in our chairs in the air and just out here in nature. Is there ever a better time to recognize the oneness of spirituality, of Creator, of God with us, that we are one with that, Anna Carolina and I, right here and right now, feeling the nature, feeling the wind, seeing the hills, knowing the oceans just beyond, that we are part of this beautiful creation. And as so, we are going to share today in this unique way that is going to come through with total perfection, because I declare it as such, and as being part of the oneness of this creation. We know everything we create is unfolding perfectly. May all the words of wisdom flow freely for others to hear exactly what's needed from us sharing and being friends with ease right here and right now. I'm so grateful for Anna Carolina for this opportunity, for this shared energy, for this beautiful place, and for the technology that allows it to happen. I say thank you, as I know my words are embedded into this earth that we sit upon right now as law, for that God spark is within me as it is within her, as together we declare Aho.
Aho. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, for sharing space. We've been wanting to do this for a while.
Quite some time.
So I'm excited. And we both knew it was going to happen at the right time, at the right moment. So thank you so much for being here. So Hillary Sepulveda, you have a long story, a long history with spirituality. Your own life journey has, taught you so much, and tus ancestros and your lineage. There's so much wisdom as well. Hillary, you've been a coach for more than 25 years, and correct?
Correct.
For more than 25 years, and in the process, you've developed a program that's called Radical Recovery. I want us to talk about radical recovery of self.
Okay.
It's been a program that I've started myself, and I know how powerful it is and how much wisdom you've channeled through that program. And first of all, I'd like to talk about, what are we recovering from?
Right. Everything. Everything and anything. But truly, radical recovery of self is really recovering from the need to find validation outside of ourselves. It's coming back to our core, coming back to home within. And what makes it radical? Because we learn to put ourselves first. And that shines in the face of what we've learned in most societal things. We put, whether it's a partner or spiritual church or school or a job above us, and down here we end up at the bottom.
Yeah.
And so what's radical is it's flipping it on its head to learn to pour into ourselves first and then give from that overflow.
Wow, it's such a process to come back, huh?
Yeah, it's radical.
You describe it as recovering also from codependency. So what is codependency? Let's go to the very, very basic. What is codependency?
Yeah, codependency, I get asked to define that a lot. And, the best way to define it is anytime you're looking outside of yourself for validation. So it's really an unhealthy dependency. And I want to explain that in unhealthy dependency, we have healthy dependencies called intradependency, right? So dependency is quite normal. It's part of our human nature. We're both human and divine. But codependency is the unhealthy version. It's when you're stressed, you need a drink or a smoke. When you want to make a decision on a relationship, you need to call your friends and ask them all their opinions before you can make your own. And it's not that we don't want other people's opinions, it's, are they influencing our decision in a way that's unhealthy, right? And that goes the same for religion.
Yeah.
And this is why it's radical, because anytime we're looking outside of ourselves, we're denying the universal law of first cause, that we create what we experience. So if I am looking outside of myself for God to answer my prayers, I only can get the response from something outside of myself. I've handed over control of whatever I do. People say power, but really power is your personal choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we hand over our personal choice to someone else, we become codependent on them. And with that, we hand over our personal responsibility
Right.
for our actions.
And so how you've created a program that helps people to come back to connect with that inner knowing,
Yes.
right? Because, you know, this world is a reflection, right? It's helping us to kind of see where we need to work on,
Yes.
right? Where our flaws are. If we don't have something to reflect on, how can we see like that we're feeling lack or that we're feeling whatever emotion it is that we're feeling, right? So how do we come back to look and listen within?
Yeah.
That's where...
That's the overall question for all of us all the time.
Right, right.
And with radical recovery, we start with radical inventory or accountability. And we look at 5 different areas of our life. Because oftentimes, even for myself, we don't know where that codependency is. We might not have even seen it, like you said.
Yeah.
And this is something I actually do weekly.
Yeah.
Truly, I probably go through it daily in my mind a bit, but it is a weekly process on Sunday for me to take inventory. And I start with the core. I like to think of it as a table.
Right.
Right, you got 4 legs, but in the middle you have a pedestal. So if one of those legs falters, you don't fall. And that pedestal is spirituality. So I have to check in with myself. And that's different for everyone. What is my spirituality? Do I do my daily practices? For me, it's breath work, yoga, right? I need to walk in nature. I walk barefoot everywhere, but I need to walk in nature and get grounded. Those are things for me. Everyone's things are different. But as long as that pedestal is good, I know as I check the inventory of my other legs, I'm going to still be standing. So that's the first one. Then we have career and money, you know, and we have our health and vitality. We have relationships and love. And we have my favorite, creative expression, which often gets put to the wayside. And the thing of all of these is it's not just what we're lacking, as you were saying, when we look at the reflection.
Yeah, not only, of course.
Yes, because when we take inventory in a store, you don't just take what's missing, you also take what's there.
Totally,
So you're
100%.
also giving yourself the benefit of, wow, look at what I've done, look at where
Yeah.
my spirituality, look at where my career is.
It's also reflecting what the qualities or the gifts that we have within that we haven't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it
Reflect.
funds gratitude, because we're actually making a list of all the things that we're grateful for in those areas, as well as what we feel that we're lacking.
Yeah.
And so that's really the first step is, where am I right now in
Okay.
these areas, right? If we don't have that, if we can't pause and actually take an inventory of where we are with a breath, with a notepad, or whatever that is, with a thought,
Yeah.
how do we know where to go next,
Exactly.
right? Otherwise, we're letting somebody else, maybe society, trends, maybe even a coach, lead us down a way, which is validation from the outside source. So the first step is to take back and look at what you have. And that's the first step of radical recovery of self, is radical accountability and inventory.
Inventory.
Yes, inventory.
And then what would be the second step?
That's my favorite step. It's radical responsibility for self. And it is the step that people look the least favorite to, and it's my favorite. Yeah, you're already shaking your head.
Well,
You're
I mean, because it's hard. I
Yes.
mean, it can be hard.
It's
I'm not
radical.
going to say it's hard. I'm going to say it can be hard. Obviously, in different areas of our lives, it can be more challenging than others. It's different for every person, but yeah.
It can be a very sensitive thing, Anna Carolina, because oftentimes we think, well, if I'm responsible for everything, what happened when I was a child, how am I responsible for that, right? And so that can be an ongoing discussion, but it's really taking your power back. It's really empowering you by taking responsibility. If you give someone else the responsibility, where do you get the power to say, I did this and now I overcome?
Totally. But in that process, do you talk about going also to the past, to actually see what happened to you as part of your story,
Yes.
to become, you know, whatever you became, or to, you know, go through that process to overcome or to learn or to, you know?
Yes, the entire 7 steps actually has its own methodology within
Yeah.
itself to take you through a trauma process.
Yeah.
And this particular step is often coined the oh shit step
Yeah.
because of that, right? Because you are going in your past and you're looking at it. And let's take an example. Let's say you stayed in a job and were underpaid, you didn't get the promotion, you know that you are the core of that company where you work. Where do you take responsibility for your bosses constantly overlooking your work? You chose to stay in a situation where you weren't valued.
Yeah.
And really, this step is where we stop the blame, shame, and guilt game. Right? And that's why it's the oh shit. I can't blame my boss because I chose to stay there. I can't blame my ex because I chose to stay in the relationship. And there is no blaming yourself. And this is why it propels right into the 3rd step, because that step is so deep, and you can say, well, if I'm not blaming them, then it's on me. And there's a key difference between responsibility and guilt and shame and everything else. That's the meaning we put on it. So I can take responsibility for putting meaning on something.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for what happened to me, right? Because we do get, victimization is a true thing. People are victimized.
Yeah.
Whether they choose to identify as a victim, there's the choice.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't take away of somebody being victimized to say I'm responsible for being victimized. We can take the responsibility and say I take responsibility of identifying as a victim versus a victor.
Exactly.
And in that moment we go into the 3rd step, which is radical self-forgiveness, so that we don't get caught up on, oh, well, if I did that, then this is also my fault, and we start spiraling. Stop. Every step we breathe, and we think radical self-forgiveness. And this step is the most profound of all.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'll just ask you, and I know you do this work, but how often, as opposed to, let's say, forgiving someone or asking for forgiveness from someone else, do you sit down and have the conversation with yourself for all the inventory you did and responsibility you took to forgive yourself?
Yeah.
You know, maybe it is the job situation and someone's been overlooked and they take the responsibility. They have to forgive themselves for not owning their value in the moment.
It's and depending on what's happening, it can be a mourning process.
Yes.
A loss of letting go of that version of yourself that's just like still in that place of my fault, my shame, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, that guilt. And this is why there are steps. Because I found for myself, I knew the process, but I would get lost in it because I'd start spinning out somewhere along the way. And the last step that was actually added in this was self-forgiveness, because I was watching others spin out and taking responsibility, and instead of it healing, it was almost traumatizing them because they were feeling like, oh, I keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And no, we just forgive ourselves. Emotions, all of these things are truth. And I'm not talking about perception. I mean, from a universal law, new thought perspective, ancient wisdom truth, which is step 4, radical acceptance of truth. So if we understand, we can forgive ourselves, can have the conversation, right? Hillary, I'm so sorry I forgot how valuable you were and didn't speak up for you. I forgive you for not owning and speaking up for yourself in that moment. Because truth is no one can value me until I value myself, because I teach others my value.
100%.
Right? If we allow someone to put the price tag of our value on us, we haven't taken personal responsibility, right? They could mark us down on discount. They could raise the price through the roof and nobody can get to that, can't access it, right?
Totally.
We get to set our value. And truth is immovable. Real truth, capital T truth, is immovable truth. We're not talking gravity truth, we're talking about truth.
Universal
right?
truth.
Yes, because you might see something different than I do, and that is true for you.
Yeah.
And that's perception or relative truth. That's like relatively the dog.
One second. Wait. Okay, let's go back to where we were. Truth.
So relative truth was what we were talking about, our perception.
Yes.
Right? You could say, I could say, I'm so hot out here right now, and you could say, oh, I have goosebumps, I need a sweater.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
Both are true.
Mm-hmm.
That's relative truth, right? It changes how we see things. We all have our own lenses, how we see. I can't see through your eyes. I can try, but I haven't had your life experiences, so I can only understand with compassion.
Yeah.
However, absolute truth is everything is unfolding perfectly permanently. This is what universal law tells us. The law of first cause. I create through the creative process. What I believe filters through my perceptions, my relative truth, or the beliefs that I've created in my life, and that's what I experience.
Yes.
And that's how we experience things, right? This is the truth of it. Never once in all of these ancient teachings did it say it feels good. Right? In spirituality, we think, oh, it's unfolding perfectly, and people think, no, it's not, because I lost an animal, I lost a friend, or something happened tragic. There's no, we've really mixed up perfection and feels good. Mm-hmm. That's not how it works. And so that's understanding truth, as it doesn't always feel good, but we know it's unfolding perfectly, permanently.
And it's a practice to get there as well.
Everything is a practice.
Everything. It's like, it's a constant practice, because sometimes we think like, oh, I'm just going to go and do this, I don't know, meditation or breath work when I go to a festival or once in a while, or, because it's a trend. But it's actually a daily practice until it becomes
a part of you.
A part of you. And knowingness.
Yes.
It
becomes embedded, embodied. That's why we say it's an embodiment course.
Yeah.
Right? It's to really feel and embody those principles. And this is really what radical recovery is. It's not meant to, it can be by itself, but it isn't meant to have it's not like, oh my gosh, this is so radical. What's radical is that we don't put ourselves first. We forget to take responsibility. When I say put ourselves first, it also goes for taking responsibility, right? And also for gratitude, which is the fifth step. And I don't mean the gaslighting gratitude, Anna Carolina.
No,
I'm
I
so
know.
grateful this abusive relationship happened to me. No. That's not the truth, right? That's not even relatively. I'm talking about the gratitude of, wow, I'm really grateful. And some days for me, I am really grateful that I breathe.
That's been a big one for me,
right?
With health situations.
Yeah. We don't have to lie and say, I'm so grateful I'm going through this painful no. If you don't feel that gratitude, don't reach for that. Reach for a glass of water. Louise Hay, when she talked about gratitude, she would always say, reach for a glass of water, be grateful you have clean drinking water.
Yeah. Right. But try to move the mind to be grateful for something that you can actually understand, or the logical mind can actually understand why it's going to be grateful for that.
Because gratitude just continues to multiply.
Exactly.
Right. And so if we're in the truth and we continue with the job, right, and we've been overlooked and we've taken responsibility, and we understand now the truth is I am valuable.
Yeah.
And I am going exactly where I need to go. I can find the gratitude in that situation because I understand my value.
Yeah.
Right? I went through the process. Wow, I was overlooked. The reason I felt like that was because I was being undervalued, which means I value myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling undervalued, that means I actually value myself. So I can find the gratitude in knowing that difference.
Yeah.
Or maybe I quit, and I can find the gratitude in choosing myself. Right? But the gratitude in the situation, like you're saying, is finding even the smallest thing. It doesn't have to feel good. Feel good shouldn't enter into the words gratitude, unless you're being grateful because you do feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why it's an important step. And I think we hear so much about gratitude, it's kind of like...
Yeah. I can feel like, oh, you just want to be in the, all love and light.
Yes.
But it's actually a powerful method.
Sacred anger is a great subject in gratitude. It's
almost like an algorithm. When you go for something, you choose something online, it will bring you more of that.
Yes.
So it's like hackeo.
Yes, it's a hack. It's
a hack.
Spiritual hack where that's why it's a practice, right? The more you do it, the more it multiplies, the more gratitude we experience.
Yeah. But it can't be like, I'm grateful, but I'm feeling shit inside. It's
Yeah,
like,
because as soon as you do that, and this is how it works, right?
it took me a while to be grateful these past months.
Yeah.
But again, when I'm going through a hard time and with my health, then that's when it becomes even a lot easier to be grateful. Because it's like, oh, you do forget to be grateful.
It's almost like a wringing out the cloth, and it's almost dry, and you're just trying to squeeze that last drop out of it, and as soon as it does, you realize, oh, there's a whole bunch down there already to be grateful for. And gratitude can be a challenge, right? Especially because we have heard it so much. I mean, 20 years ago, and Oprah was doing random acts of kindness, right? And started a whole gratitude movement of paying it forward. And it's kind of like, and it's just, we've heard it so much, we're like,
exactly. We're like,
I don't want any more gratitude.
But it's like,
We forgot what sacred gratitude. It's a hack. And the thing is when we go back a step and we take truth, let's say we lose our temper and we have anger.
Yeah.
Why are we putting meaning that feeling good is the only okay emotion?
Yeah, yeah.
There is anger that is unhealthy, and then there's sacred anger, because when we suppress things, we're only continuing to fuel that, right? And so then we get a stagnant pond that eventually just blows up, and it's
or we
sticky,
get
horrible
sick,
water. Yeah, because
low energy, all sorts of diseases.
Dis-ease.
But
and so when we find gratitude, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just like the importance of this work is you can actually heal from...
without making yourself wrong. Because what I wanted to say is one of the biggest codependencies we have is what meaning we put on something. Somebody else, their actions, and also our own, right? And so we can find the gratitude, and maybe I'm not going to shame myself right now, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Maybe you did lose your temper in not a sacred way with someone.
Yeah.
And you need to say forgiveness to that person. You can find gratitude for seeing your reflection and owning your responsibility, right? Without making the anger wrong. And I say that because so much, we've finally gotten as a society where it's okay to cry and show emotion, right? And it doesn't make women crazy or men weak to show that. But we haven't really gotten there with all the emotions. There's not just happiness and sadness.
Totally, totally.
And so that really comes into gratitude for me, is owning all the different emotions with emotional sovereignty. Right? I understand that I'm angry, and it's okay, because how I feel is angry, and I'm grateful that I can honor myself to feel angry right now in a healthy way. Maybe it's going on a hike and screaming into the mountain. Maybe it's sitting down and telling someone how you really feel and having the sovereignty to hold that boundary.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, find the gratitude in that.
It's information in the end. And sometimes we just say like, oh no, it's not right for me to feel that anger. I'm above that. But it's like, no, you're not. It's still there. It's still within you. Listen to it. What does it want to say? Because otherwise you'll never connect with the true power that you have within. 100%. It's something that I've been working on for the past months, anger.
Yes. It took me a long time, I'll be honest with you, to get angry without crying. Because I had so much fear. I didn't realize this until about 1.5 years ago. I always thought it was just part of my process. I'm a crier.
Me too.
Lloro, and I cry about everything, in commercials, everything, happiness, everything. It makes me cry. I'm emotional. I love it. And people have made fun of me my whole life, and I don't care. I cry. And then I realized that, wow, when I'm angry, I actually have so much fear. Why I cry when I'm angry is I have fear, because I've made anger so wrong. I'm worried about the other person, so much so in my anger that I start crying. So my point does not get relayed in anger. It gets relayed in victimhood.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh gosh, she's crying again.
I could just connect that recently as well.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah. Right? We're like, okay, here we go again. Truly, right? And it's like, I want to say something to you, but I thought I was this confident, self-empowered woman, and I would go to say something and only tears would come out, but I was pissed.
Exactly. Yes, yes.
And they're like, it's okay. And I'm thinking, wow. but I couldn't get it out. And so I made that wrong until about 1.5 years ago. And I started getting really grateful for my tears. And I started getting grateful for sacred anger. Really sacred rage. I never allowed rage. I have lost my temper. I have children. I've yelled at my kids. I've yelled at people for sure.
Yeah.
I've had businesses. I've definitely gotten frustrated with employees. But I've never had sacred rage, where I'm so full of rage, fire in the belly rage. And instead of suppressing it or making it wrong or trying to yell at someone, I actually go through the 7 steps. I inventoried it. I took responsibility of what it was.
Yeah.
And I stayed with it for about a day because it took me a minute to find it, what it was.
Yeah, well, a day. Imagine sometimes it takes more than a day.
Yeah, well, I have some practice.
Yeah.
Right? And then I had to forgive myself. I didn't forgive myself for getting angry. I forgave myself for not allowing the anger before. Because the anger turned into rage. And had I allowed myself to be honored in my emotions, I wouldn't have had the rage. Yeah. So instead of forgiving myself for getting angry, I forgave myself for not allowing the anger before.
Yeah.
And wow, it was like, whoa. And I went happy. It was just like this. Because the truth was, I was like, oh, I'm okay. I deserve to be angry sometimes. Yeah. Wow, I'm really grateful. I can forgive myself.
I can do this. Yeah. I can feel it.
I cried.
I can honor it.
Yeah, I cried. I was so emotional. I was like, oh my God, I deserve to be angry.
Yeah.
And so I got to the 6th step, which is commitment.
Okay, let's talk about commitment.
Mm-hmm. This is the most important because of what we spoke about of our creative process. Mm-hmm. What we believe. We're all committed. Have you ever known someone who says they're non-committal? Identifies as that?
Yes, I have done that for some time.
Okay.
But you always commit to something. You're
committing to be non-committal.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
committing to something.
You've committed to everybody else making the decisions for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So all of this started because I was a victim of my own I was so codependent on becoming a victim that even when things were going good, I changed my story so people would feel bad for me. And this is where
that was a way that you felt that you could connect.
Validated,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. That they could connect to my whatever trauma I was going through in the moment.
Yeah.
And I realized that with commitment, what we focus on is what we experience, right? So the truth of life is, and this one's hard for me sometimes, I'm going to admit it, probably weekly I go through this.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, fuck, I have to change my commitment, excuse me.
Uh-huh.
I have changed my commitment. Because your commitment is what you experience in life. If you're questioning whether you're committed to something, just look around.
Look at what's happening around. Look at
what's happening around. You have committed. If I have everything in my life I've desired except for finances, I've committed to lack. Mm-hmm. And I may even, and we see this a lot with spiritual people, and they're like, no, I'm calling it in. Well, if you're calling it in, you're saying it's not here.
Yeah.
Because if it's here, it's here. If you're calling it in, you're waiting for it because you don't have it. So it's still from lack, right? And so what are we really committed to? If we're committed to being non-committal, we're committed to everyone else making decisions for us, right? And we'll be able to see that. And it can feel like everyone else is moving you through life rather than you deciding your path. And so commitment really starts with looking at the inventory and going, where is my life, right? And you go, okay, here it is. Where is it that I don't want? Mm-hmm. Okay, what's that belief? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? If it's money and you don't have it, the belief is lack. Do you need to dig in and find out why? I mean, you can. Radical recovery can be used with all different methodologies, but it really isn't necessary. What's necessary is to recommit.
Exactly.
Because you know truth, you can recommit at any time.
Where are you taking your attention?
Absolutely.
Where is your attention going, the energy going, and then the manifestation is going?
Yes, because where your attention goes, the energy flows.
So when we say, no, but I'm actually focusing on that, I'm thinking about that, as you're saying, that this is what I want, but it's a very different energy within to say this is what I want versus this is what is already here.
This is what I have.
This is what I have.
Yes, because if you want it, you don't have it. So you've declared lack.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is part of
so you almost, we almost have to be a little bit delusional.
Yes. It's true. Manifestation is delusional.
Delusional.
By societal standards.
Totally. We have to
Yes.
be delusional to say, no, I see it. You don't see it? I see it there. Like I see, XYZ that I've been wanting, but it's already there. It's the el telón, how do you say, hasn't been pulled yet.
Yeah.
But
it's there.
It's there. So it's about like connecting to that feeling.
It's the feeling 100%. Your commitment is a feeling. And this is one of the big things that we hear about lists for manifestations. What qualities do you want in a partner? What qualities do you want in a job? Wrong answer. What feeling does that partnership evoke from you? When you close your eyes and you're in that partnership with someone, maybe you can't even see, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you feel what does that feel?
Excited.
What does it feel like when you're having a bad day?
Excited and ready to jump out of a plane.
Right, there you go. I'm like supported, right?
Supported as well, but very,
yes, and protected, and
yeah.
Everyone's going to be different. And it's like, it's recognizing I have this in my life. I am supported. I am protected. I am safe to jump out of a plane, right? But it's the I am. A commitment is an I am, not I want, I will, this is coming. No. You don't say, I will marry you at your vows. You say, I do.
Yeah.
You don't say, I'm going to. Oh my gosh, that'd be horrible if someone said that, right? I'm going to. No, I do. It's now, it's done, right? We don't order our food in the restaurant and then go chase the chef for half an hour while we wait. We ordered it. We know what's coming. It's coming. And that's a commitment.
Yeah. And that's why it's a practice.
And that's why it's a practice. And
So go
when
back
you get
to
to that, when you go back to I have to go back to inventory and when I get to the commitment all the time, because I think, well, I'm committed to this, but I don't see it. So I guess I gotta go back to step number 1. So I often get not stuck, but I have to go back and do the steps again to 6 to get committed, to figure out what I need to commit to as well.
Right.
And then the last one is easy. It's radical action. It's inspired action. And I use the word inspire because it means breathe life into. So if we just made a commitment and now we take the action, we're breathing life into that commitment.
Well, sometimes it sounds easier than what it can be. You know that?
I think it's because we think action and we think movement.
Right.
But action could be sitting.
Yeah, but well, then to get to that, I get what you're saying, but also to get to that level of, I know that it's all, well, it's relative, right? It depends.
Everything is happening for you, through you. And that is not relative. And that is regardless of whether someone is aware of it or not.
Yes.
Everything is happening for you, through you in this moment.
Yes.
And this is why it's mental science, because it can be proven versus...
It can be proven, but also like when you say, well, it's not always taking action, but it's not always sitting. It's like it will... It's like setting up the right intention that will go behind that.
That's your commitment.
Action, right?
So that's why the commitment's first.
Yeah.
You need to know what you're committed to. What if you're committed to allowing the career of your dreams to come because you're not sure what your purpose and passion is?
Right.
What does that look like in action? Maybe it's meditating and waiting for answers, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's trying a bunch of new things, but it also might be pausing.
Right.
Which is still an action.
Yeah.
But it isn't we're human beings, Ana Carolina. We're not human doers.
I get it.
So
But sometimes I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes we can just fall into like, I'm just going to wait for it to like manifest when it has to versus, no, maybe you do need to make that phone call. Maybe you do need to like...
I bet each individual is going to be different.
Totally. That's what I was saying.
And I find
that's what I was saying.
The majority of people are actually the opposite. I wish I could get them to sit. The most of the people that come into radical recovery want to know what they need to do. And I call it a case of the shoulds. I had an amazing teacher, and she used to say, you're shoulding on yourself, Hillary. Because I would say, oh, you know what I should do? Oh, I should do this. Oh, it'd be great if I did this. And I was doing all these should-haves rather than I already claimed it for myself. So that action should be clear, right? If I claim to launch Radical Recovery of Self-Collective, there's action steps behind that. I can't just sit and meditate and all of a sudden there's a whole platform built.
Exactly.
Right? But I can sit and meditate for the answers of who to build the platform.
Who to build the platform with,
Yeah. I can also investigate and go online and take interviews of who to build the platform. Right? There's all different types of action steps. What if I did that and there was no one there to build it?
Yeah.
I did do that. For almost 2 years I looked at building it and I couldn't find something, one, that was affordable in my budget, and two, that worked in the interactive way I imagined, because there wasn't what I wanted out there. And so what did that mean? I created it in a different way. And is it changing? Always. Because it's still not quite there, right? So there's some action, and also acceptance is an action. Acceptance that you've made the commitment and it's unfolding properly and the steps are aligned for you is an action. The commitment to know that everything is happening for you, through you now, that's a commitment.
Yeah.
The action is the trust that as things come in, you know this is for your best interest.
Exactly.
It really does. It can be super complicated.
No, well, I think that once you connect with that, with your intuition, with higher self, God, the universe, then that's a different, when you take action, it comes from a different place.
Yes.
And that is, I guess, a practice.
Well, this is part of truth, right? Because regardless of religion is spirituality that has man-made rules around it, where spirituality is a very individual process for whatever that may be. I personally believe in that we have this God spark within us. Traditionally, I come from, typical religions, and so I go back to the Torah or the Old Testament, and we have that we're made to imitate God.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And people say in the image of God, but the true translation is we are made to imitate God. So I often sit back, what does God do? Right? First of all, what is God, and what does God do?
Yeah.
God creates. I don't care what religion or spirituality, if you say spirit, if you say spirits, if you say creator, if you say God, if you say Allah, it doesn't matter. It's creation. So what are we to do?
Create. And a lot of our, sadness or depression comes when we're not tapping into that.
We've created it because we didn't tap in.
Yeah. Because
we didn't self-forgive.
Exactly.
We can reclaim truth. We can be grateful that it's still here to tap in. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So the gratitude could simply be not, I didn't tap in. It's like, I can re-tap in and I can recommit. And I recommit to that practice, and now I do it.
Exactly.
And then the next day, maybe you forgot.
So
then you do it again.
Go back to the remembering again and again and again.
It is. And someone asked me the other day, how often do I do the 7 steps? And I thought, I don't know, 50 million times a day. Every time I'm feeling something, I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. Actually, the truth is I take my inventory. Yeah. I made this decision, but the truth is I can make a new decision if it's a decision I don't like. I'm grateful for that. I make the new decision and I go forward. And it's really like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So sometimes it's just forgiveness.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to go into one of those.
Yes, you don't need it's not like you have to sit down and spend 90 minutes. It's a reminder to keep us from dipping so far into, it was really created from dipping so far into our trauma, we forget to get out. And we find this in this, I'm sure you've seen it too, in this spiritual network of community, we can find almost an addiction on the work.
Totally.
So it leaves us in the victimhood because we're always searching for the next thing instead of celebrating where we are. And this is also why it's a little radical, because I'm like, you put yourself first. You have to be self-full. If you don't fill the cup first and you give from your cup, you're emptying your cup. If you give from your overflow, you get to pour into yourself and everyone else around you.
And it feels totally different.
It's so different because it never feels burden or anything else. And you know, if you can't, you take the responsibility and you say no.
Yeah.
And you say, I have to pour into my cup. Maybe they want to pour in your cup. But that's the thing. If we rely on someone else to pour in our cup, this is the biggest thing.
But it's not.
If we rely on anyone to make us happy, if we depend on someone to make us happy, what we've done is we've given them also the power for every other emotion.
100%. We can welcome it, but know that it's actually coming from
within.
Mm-hmm. So let's go very quickly. Again, review the
radical accountability and inventory of self, radical responsibility for self, radical self-forgiveness, radical acceptance of big T truth,
radical acceptance of big T truth,
yes, radical gratitude,
radical commitment,
and radical inspired action, Yes.
Where do you see in this 7-step process? Where do you see that? I think you said that. I think you said this at the beginning. That people tend to like find kind of like more blockages. The second step,
responsibility.
Yeah.
And forgiveness. They go hand in hand. Especially because when we're dealing with our trauma, there's so many things that we have been victimized.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit of a mind change to think. You might have. We can take a drastic situation. I deal a lot with assault.
Okay.
I've done a lot with youth and sexual assaults as well. And so when we're dealing with, let's say, something super drastic of a child molestation, it's a very serious subject of trauma. They're young, maybe even too young to make their own decisions, under 2. How do they take personal responsibility for that victimization? Right?
Yeah.
That is that's a big example, but it could be in something small, but that's where the resistance comes. And really it's about recognizing you were victimized, and the responsibility could simply be I take responsibility that I didn't know I could tell someone, right? It could be from even a past life.
Yeah.
We have epigenetics is generational trauma that has now been scientifically proven to stay in our DNA. So the responsibility doesn't necessarily, it's not a blame. I think that's where people get stuck, and they're like, how can I overcome this if you're blaming me? No. You can say, I take responsibility for feeling as a victim all these years, as I know this changed me, but maybe instead of it changing me this way, which was a negative way, I can now use this to propel me forward.
Find the power with the story. Find the power in the story.
I take responsibility for not seeing another option.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? But it's never the blame. And that one gets really serious. It's why there's forgiveness in there, right? And well, what do you forgive a 2-year-old for being victimized?
Yeah.
I forgive myself for thinking that had to affect my life so negatively and my whole life, right? Or I've even had someone say I forgive myself for forgiving my abuser for so many years without acknowledging it, right?
Not giving myself
They didn't tell.
Yeah.
And they just kept forgiving over and over again. And so they had to forgive themselves for not setting a boundary because they didn't know
how to do that. Yeah.
Sometimes it's forgiving ourselves for thinking we needed to do something when really we couldn't.
Yeah.
The forgiveness step is so personal that it can't really be made into a blanket statement.
No.
It's a conversation with yourself. Like it's Hillary and I have Hillary, I'm so sorry. Hillary, I forgive you. You didn't know. And it's the same as we would do if you and I had a falling out.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I didn't show up for you the way I should have. I believe in you and I didn't tell you that. And you can say, I know you believe in me and you did the best you could at that time.
Yeah.
But it's with yourself and your higher self. And only you know what you truly need to be forgiven for. Right? And so those are the 2 steps that are like, oof. And also really rewarding when you can finally hear the words of forgiveness maybe you've been craving but didn't even know.
From yourself or from the external.
Yes.
Woo. Wow. This is, again, how much, what's the I guess it also depends on each person, but what's more or less the time frame of a program that
Yeah,
if
it really
say
does.
that they kind of stay consistent?
Well, the program is set up for a year.
Okay.
You can go through the embodiment program, which is 200 hours, and you can then do an internship with us after for actual coaching, and we set you up for business and clients, or you can do it for your own embodiment.
Right.
The minimum time, and when I say minimum, I have not had someone do it yet,
Yeah.
is 8 weeks.
Okay.
So you need 8 weeks. It's 7 steps plus 1. So you need 8 weeks.
Almost like one step per week.
It's 1 step
Yeah.
per week, but it's actually 5 lessons per week because it's 200 hours.
Mm-hmm.
They're short. They're 20 minutes, with a worksheet. But you get them every day for 5 days within the program. So it's not just 1 hour. And then you have live calls as well. Okay. So it's really intense. And I found that I created it for 8 weeks, but I find that when they get to step 2 and 3, they tend to stay there for about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So I've had people take a year. And I think the fastest is 10 weeks.
Okay.
And that's the self-paced program. Because if we're doing it just live, which is how we started before we had pre-recorded courses, that was a year program.
Okay.
So it was set up for a year, but it was only 1 call a week, where now it's 5, you're getting 5 classes each week pre-recorded.
Okay, perfect. Where can people find more information? Where can they have?
I'm Hillary Sepulveda Brown on Instagram. I have my link tree on there. They can send a DM.
We'll put it on the
Perfect.
On the screen.
Yes, yeah, and that's the best way. Book a personal call. It's free. One of our coaches will come on and walk you through it. And you get all of it. You get live calls, the 200 hour. There's recipe books. There's a calendar, a journal, a daily thought journal, which really is my favorite. And they're all personal quotes of mine that just help me go through. And it'll challenge you to do a little thing for the day, like, I am inspired by others who inspire me. I inspire others who inspire me. So if you're inspired by someone, maybe it's something reaching out or tagging them, but it's something small that can find the little steps of gratitude and just remind us that we set our boundaries, we set our price tags, and our value ourselves, and to radically recover that God spark within ourselves.
So we can create from that place.
Yes, because as that spark lights, what do sparks do? They ignite fires all over. So if we can reignite our spark, we just are igniting sparks everywhere we go. And we can see the chispas and everybody light up, right? And that's the rewarding part.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all this information, for being here. I'm so grateful.
Thank
truly,
you.
Truly,
I
truly.
love you so much. Thank
I
you.
love you
Te
too.
amo mucho.
También. Gracias, gracias.
Wow.